Hello, everyone. Can everyone hear me okay? Can I get like a thumbs up? You can hear me okay? Great. Hello, my name is Francisca Gasilvera. I am the Assistant Literary Director at JIPA. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am so thrilled to be here with everyone tonight for our virtual Campfire Ghost Stories event, which is one of many events for Recognition Radio.
Here we go. Okay, thanks.
An audio festival celebrating Black voices. This event is connected to the play Feeding Beatrice by playwright Kirsten Grenitt, who is one of my absolute favorite people in this world and who we all have the honor of having with us tonight. I will put her on the spot and do a proper introduction later on. A logistical thing, which I think most people have done so far, if you could just keep your mics off for the evening until a little bit later, if you are so brave as to share your own ghost stories with us. But for the time being, if you could please keep your mics off. Feel free to keep your videos on. We do want to capture the campfire feel. So as our storytellers are telling their stories, you can sort of check out, if people are just as scared as you are. So keep your videos on. If you could change your view to be on speaker mode, which you can do at the very top. If you click on view, there's gallery and there's speaker. Speaker mode will allow you to see the storytellers while still being able to see some other audience members as well. If you require closed captioning, that is available. There's an option at the bottom. Usually if you click more, you'll be able to see show subtitles. So if you click on that, closed captioning will pop up. Before we officially kick things off, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge two things. The first is our land acknowledgement, which is a new practice for us at JIVA. Those of you who have already listened to Feeding Beatrice have heard a shorter version of this already. I will just read that to all of you. We respectfully acknowledge that Jiva Theater Center sits on the ancestral and unceded territory of the Onondaga, or the people of the Great Hill. In English, they are known as the Seneca people, the keeper of the Western Door. They have stewarded this land through generations, and we pay respect and give thanks to their elders past and present. We are meeting digitally and recognize the legacies of colonization embedded within the technologies, structures, and ways of thinking that we've come to rely on, especially now. We are using equipment and internet that is not available in many Indigenous communities across and beyond the United States. The devices that we use were made in ways that carry a carbon footprint and contribute to the climate change that disproportionately affects Indigenous peoples worldwide. We invite you to share in the chat whose ancestral land you are on if you are not currently in Rochester. If you don't know, there is a really fantastic website that you can use to find out. It is www.native-land.ca, and that is being put into the chat for you to click on. I also encourage everyone to find out more about why JIVA is doing land acknowledgements and about the history of the land that our theater sits on our JIVA Journal blog, a really fantastic article that was written by our literary director, Jenny Warner. So please check that out. There are a plethora of resources for that. I'd also like to take a moment to acknowledge the moment that we are all existing in right now, in this very second. And not just this week, but really it's the culmination of many, many events that have led us to this week. I am personally really grateful to be here with all of you tonight, to take a small moment of reprieve from everything and to just be in community and to do my favorite thing, which is to tell stories. So thank you. Before we officially get started, I'm hoping like you all can indulge me a little bit in just taking some collective breaths together to really settle into the moment and to lean into the event and sort of breathe away all of the stress that I'm sure and that is living in all of our bodies right now. So just take 2 collective breaths together and then go in. So if we can all just inhale and then exhale. Inhale. And exhale. Thank you. Hopefully we all feel a little bit lighter right now. I know I certainly do. I'd like to get us started with our first storyteller. Her name is Laura Thomas. Laura is a playwright, director, actor, and native Rochesterian with a lifelong love of theater. She most recently took part in the Rochester Fringe Festival, has written for Juba's annual Bake Off and the Bronx Collective Theater Festival. Since 2008, Laura has been involved with the Sankofa Theater Festival, which annually showcases the works of African-American playwrights. She's also a proud member of the MMB Theater One Project's Playwrights Directors in Residence Project and was selected as a playwright in residence with the Multi-Use Community Cultural Center. So please let us welcome Laura for our first ghost story of the night.
All right, thank you. And first of all, I want to make sure you can hear me okay. And if you can?
Yes.
Okay, I'll proceed. My story is called The Sweeper. Okay. There was an old man who dwelled near a church. He found comfort there. With his shack so close by, he swept the churchyard often, at least twice a day, even if it was not needed and he was only sweeping the soft powdery dirt that blew almost imperceptibly across the church rectory. The old man was not asked to sweep. He was not even provided a broom. He used a beat-up old piece of straw broom that he found in a trash heap during his daily wandering around town. He did the sweeping somewhat as his penance. It was the least he could do. Anytime the old man saw the church priest, he'd straighten up a little, gather what strength he could in his tense vocal cords, and yell out as heartily as he could, "Any chores needing done today, Father?" Father Bartholomew would never stop. He would always walk hastily past the old man saying, "No, we have a man for that." He wished the father would stop and talk to him, maybe invite him to service the way people seem to always do for a person in need of something. But Father Bartholomew walked hurriedly past the old man with his Bible clutched to his chest and his eyes downcast as he trekked the 50 feet to the church's back door. The old man noticed that the father would always look back over his shoulder at him when the father was safely at the church door, out of the old man's reach. Could the father somehow know? The old man wondered sometimes if the man of the cloth had the power to see secrets and misdeeds of an old man's past. The old man wanted to atone for the past. He wanted to ask forgiveness. His misdeeds had not been many, but there was one in particular that caused him to seek to be near a church, to be near a place of forgiveness, and to prevent him from ever repeating that misdeed. Every morning, when the old man awoke in his narrow iron-framed cot, before he opened his roomy eyes and touched his calloused feet to the cold wooden floor, before he mustered the strength to sit up and listen to the squeaks of his bed frames echoing the silence of his sparse bungalow, the misdeed was always his first thought. It was a time, 50 years ago, when he was a spry young man of 30, strong and healthy and living and working on the great sea. He loved to breathe the salty sea air, and he enjoyed the work and the camaraderie of his shipmates. It was hard, dirty work, but it suited him. Sometimes a young boy trying to make his way in the world would get work on the ship and travel with them as a deckhand or maybe a cabin boy. There were many, but the one he remembered was a youth of 17 called Toby Tolliver. Toby was an energetic and enthusiastic boy. He was a good-natured boy who liked to laugh. He had large brown curls and twinkling eyes that appeared to be golden when the boy was especially happy or on sunny days. Toby liked to ask him about his life at sea. During those talks, the old man learned that Toby was one of 5 kids whose mean father was an even meaner drunk. After Toby's mother died, his younger siblings were parceled out to relatives who grudgingly took them in. There was no one to take Toby in, so he set out on his own. The old man looked out for Toby just because he could see the boy was alone in the world, and he could easily be taken advantage of by the rough and seasoned sailors. The boy appreciated the old man's kindness, and he often helped him with extra chores. That is how they both happened to be saved during the shipwreck that day. They were both in the hatch. Suddenly, there was a wreck. Most of the crew and provisions were swept deep into the sea. The old man, Toby Tolliver, and 3 others survived the sudden and devastating wreck. Although most everything was lost, they were grateful to be alive at first. After being stranded at sea for more than 25 days, and with their small rations having been depleted 17 days earlier, they had to eat something or they would all perish. Some days, when the old man thought back, he felt they had no choice. They needed to survive by any means. Other times, he thought, we should have kept our humanity. Whichever way his reasoning bent on any particular day, there was one thought that was constant. How did they all decide it would be Toby? Toby was the one. Toby, was it because he was the youngest, the weakest, and the newest member of the crew? The old man always tried to pinpoint the moment it was decided. He wondered how the 4 men came to the conclusion, without talking about it, that this young boy must be the one to save their lives. Why was it not debated? Everyone knew how fond he was of the boy. Who was the first to say the words he wanted to remember? He knew it would not lessen the guilt and sorrow he still felt 50 years later, but he wanted to know who gave voice to the words. Was it he? No. Likely it was LaPlante, a Frenchman who claimed to descend from royalty. Or maybe it was Stavros, a sloppy bully of a man who cheated at cards and never paid his gambling debts. Although the old man's mind could not recall how the misdeed was decided, every morning, without fail, his mind recalled the morning it happened. Stavros, the large bully, stood before him, weakened as they all were. The bully gripped a hook knife tightly in his right hand. The other men stood behind him. The boy lay severely weakened in a corner. Maybe it was the boy's youth that caused the relatively quick ravage of his already slender body. Whereas the hardy sailors were gravely weakened from starvation, they were still able to walk. The boy lay defenseless. Stavros, the brute that he was, approached the boy with a hook knife in his hand. The old man stood up and he put his own hand up in a stop motion. Stavros offered the knife to the old man, handle first. The old man waved it away. The old man then turned and looked down at the face of young Toby. The boy's cheeks, like all of theirs, were sunken. The once happy golden eyes were now deep hollows in their sockets. The old man brushed his right hand across the boy's forehead and into the dusty, tangled mess of brown curls that had grown longer in the days since they were lost at sea. He wanted to kiss the sweet young head as a father would when putting his young son to sleep for the night, but instead, he moved his hand down the boy's face. He used his right hand to squeeze the boy's nostrils shut and simultaneously cover the boy's mouth. This boy, this happy lover of life, made a feeble movement to flail and pull away, but he was too weak. The old man used his left hand to cover his right hand, which was extinguishing the last bit of life from the boy. He held that position for less than 5 minutes. The men never discussed what they did to survive. Even when they saw each other in the hospital after their rescue a week later, they looked away from each other. The consumption of the young boy's flesh and organs saved the lives of the 4. The guilt still consumes the old man, not only because of his part in sacrificing young Toby so he could live, but also because he craves deeply the taste of human flesh. Despite himself, the old man yearns to once again taste the sweet, tangy meat of human flesh. Yes, he knows it's wrong, especially now that food is plentiful, but that does not quell his desire. His yearning is so strong that he wonders how long he can keep the desire at bay. He wishes for strength to combat the desire. So the old man dwelled near a church, but instead of growing strength, his will is waning. And so, as the old man sweeps the churchyard, he finds himself watching, waiting. He so wishes the father would stop and talk to him. Even more, he wishes the father to be his next meal. The end.
Ooh.
Wow.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you.
And
I'm just gonna take a little. I need that for my.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, definitely did not see that one coming. All right. Next.
well, I kind of like to do a little twist sometimes.
It definitely was a twist. Thank you. Thank you, Laura. Our next storyteller is Brianna Clark. Brianna is a writer, a poet, a vocalist, activist, and all-around seeker of liberation. Brianna enjoys telling stories through the lens of her lived experience, as well as using her voice to uplift the voices and stories of others. She continues to use her skills for storytelling to bring unity and uplift others. So please let us welcome Brianna. And again, if everyone could have their mics muted. Thank you. Thank you.
Hello. You guys can hear me? Yes, okay. This is called The Girl of Lake Lanier. Just after his 10th birthday, Jalil enrolled in his first year of summer camp. Jalil could have gone to camp before, but he never wanted to. New places and new faces just weren't his thing. But this year, he reluctantly agreed to go. Jalil approached his new home for the week with an attitude of indifference and rolled his bags into the main hall to await announcements and orientation. Right at the entrance of the main hall was a big, old, rickety sign that read, "Welcome to Camp Lanier." Jalil paused in front of the sign, took a deep breath, and hesitantly continued forward. Inside the hall, there was a wall dedicated to Camp Lanier alumni. This wall was full of young kids smiling from ear to ear, with the camp as their backdrop. Jalil skimmed the wall, looking at each photo like he was in a museum. As he skimmed through the photos, he came across a girl. She had long blonde hair, ocean blue eyes, and the brightest smile he had ever seen. She posed with her head cocked to the side while holding up one finger. What a weird pose. He studied this picture for a while. He couldn't look away. There was something about this girl, something familiar yet mysterious. Jalil was mesmerized by this photo, but his trance-like state was interrupted by a call for all to sit down for orientation. Jalil took one more glance at the girl and then sat down. Night came, and Jalil found himself wide awake in his bunk. He was never able to fall asleep in new places. He laid on his back and closed his eyes. But just as he had gotten comfortable, he heard a voice call his name. He sat up and looked around. All of his cabin mates were sound asleep. So he laid back down and waited to see if he would hear the voice again. As time passed, he began to think that it was all in his mind. So Jalil closed his eyes and tried to get comfortable once more. Just as he began to drift, he heard the voice again. His eyes flew open. Someone was calling his name. The voice called out once more, and Jalil noticed a shadow outside of the cabin's front door. Jalil quietly rose out of his bunk, slipped his sneakers on, and went outside. There was a figure standing just in front of the cabin. Jalil slowly approached the dark figure. As he got closer, the figure came into focus. It was the girl from the photo. He began getting closer and closer to her, but as he approached, she began to run away. So he ran after her. She ran past all of the cabins and into the woods behind the camp. Jalil went into the woods after her. Something in him had to know where she was going. For a moment, he lost sight of her, but he kept running, eager to find her again. When he came out on the other side of the woods, he discovered her standing just beyond them. He stopped. There was a lake at the edge of Camp Lanier, hidden behind the woods. No one had spoken about it or even acknowledged its existence in orientation. But this is where she led him. They stared at each other for a moment. Then she turned and ran toward the lake. He ran after her, but once she reached the shore, she disappeared. Jalil stopped dead in his tracks. He did not know what he just saw. She vanished right at the edge of the lake. She just vanished. Jalil wanted to call out to her, but didn't want to risk being caught outside of his cabin after dark. After a few minutes of waiting for her to reappear, Jalil decided to head back. The next day, Jalil awoke, tired and confused. He dwelled on the events of the night before and all of its unexplainable moments. Maybe it was just a very lucid dream. What human has the ability to vanish into thin air? Jalil spent the day distracted by his thoughts, and he was pleased when the day finally ended. Maybe tonight he could get some real rest. Jalil laid in his bunk and immediately began to feel himself drifting into sleep. But he was suddenly interrupted by the sound of his name. Laying still on his back, he turned his head toward the front door of the cabin and saw a shadowy figure just outside of it. He immediately put on his sneakers and went outside. She was back. It wasn't a dream. They stared at each other. Jalil stared in disbelief, while she stared as though she knew he would come to her. She began to run toward the wood, and once again, Jalil ran after her. This time, he made sure to keep her in his sights. They arrived just on the other side of the woods, but instead of stopping, the girl kept running toward the lake. But just as the night before, when the two reached the shore, the girl disappeared. Jalil stopped at the shore and sighed in frustration. He didn't bother waiting for her to return. He just headed back to his cabin. Jalil spent the next night tossing and turning in his bunk. He couldn't stop thinking about her. Who is this girl? What does she want? Specifically, what did she want with him? Her elusive nature confused and enticed him at the same time. Why call for him and then disappear when he comes? It seems as though the girl wanted him to chase her, but did not want to be caught. Was this all a game to her? Was Jalil a game to her? What was this all about? In mid-thought, the picture of the girl flashed across Jalil's mind. He couldn't help but think about that one finger. What a weird pose. There was so much about her he wanted to figure out. These unanswered questions left Jalil restless and deep in thought. Then, the sound of his name filled his ears. He shot up in his bunk and looked around. Seeing all of his cabin mates fast asleep for the third night in a row only meant one thing. She was back. A barefoot Jalil slipped out of the front door of his cabin and headed straight for the lake. At this point, he could almost do it with his eyes closed. As she drew nearer, the sound of his name grew louder, and once he approached the lake, he saw her. Jalil came to the edge of the lake and stopped at the shore. She stood right in the center of the lake, staring directly at him. At first, he stared back, but quickly looked away in panic. How was she doing that? He heard his name again. His head shot back up. He could hear her calling out to him, but her mouth was idle. Her voice was like a sweet song that lassoed around him and held him tight, and it was pulling him in. Without resistance, he walked toward her. The shore that once swallowed his feet with every incoming tide now rested below them. Jalil looked down amazed. He took another step, and he did not sink. Just as the lake had been holding her up, it held him too. It was as if the lake was bending to her will, and so was he. He walked forward, his body ignoring the warnings of his mind. She had him, and this time she wasn't leaving or letting him go. He kept walking, the shore now well into the distance, but he did not sink. He got closer and closer to the center of the lake, closer and closer to her. She reached out her hand with her palm facing up and her fingers extended. He extends his hand back to her as he closes in. He needed just one more step and his hand would be in hers. He took a step and with a sharp inhale, he placed his hand inside of hers. He looked up at her. He couldn't believe he had come face to face with the girl of the lake. She looked at him. Then she looked down at the lake, and then she looked back up at him. A sinister grin spread across her face, and Jalil's curiosity quickly turned into fear. But before he could do anything, the girl let go of his hand, and he sank to the bottom of the lake, never to be seen again. And now, when people look upon her picture, she is still smiling brightly, but she is holding up the peace sign. Thank you.
Thank you, Brianna. I never went to camp, and I am very glad for it. That is not an experience that I think that I would enjoy. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Our next storyteller is Ebony Jones. Ebony Jones is an adjunct professor at RIT, where she currently teaches Introduction to Visual Culture. She has a BFA in Visual Media from Rochester Institute of Technology, an MA in Art History from Stony Brook University, and is pursuing her MS in Library and Information Science at the University of Buffalo. She enjoys watercolor and hand lettering and spending time with her family. Thank you. Let us welcome Ebony.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? Awesome. So my storytelling situation is going to be a little bit different than what you've heard so far, because a lot of it is kind of some background information and then some a personal story kind of relating to it. And because this story or this like folklore is rooted in Hawaii, there's a lot of terms that you might not know. And so I'm going to try and kind of give you some information, some background on some things. And I'm also going to type some words in the chat so that you're not completely lost when I'm like kind of spouting out random Hawaiian words. And then also I can get back with Fran and make sure that the transcript is as correct as possible for accessibility. So we'll go with that. So with the first story, Laura's story, I saw Fran like get visibly chilled. And so that kind of phenomenon in Hawaii is called chicken skin. So you get this like chicken skin, this chills. And so some of this background information that I'll be giving is from an anthology called Chicken Skin that was collected by Rick Carroll. And so I'm going to go ahead and get started. So I'm going to talk about the Night Marchers. So the Night Marchers were folklore that everyone in Hawaii has grown up knowing about. Definitely campfire stories at summer camp, things like that. So the Night Marchers were kings and warriors, and they are marching at night, these ghosts, and you hear them first before you see them, and then you're not supposed to look at them. So I'll give you some formal background here. Every Hawaiian has heard of the Marchers of the Night. A few have seen the procession. It is said that such sight is fatal unless one has a relative among the dead to intercede for him. If a man is found stricken by the roadside, a non-native doctor will pronounce the cause as heart failure, but a Hawaiian will think at once of the fatal night march. The time for the march is between 7:30, when the sun has actually set, and about 2 a.m. before the dawn breaks. It may occur on one of the 4 nights of the gods, on Ku, Akua, Lono, Kane, or on the nights of Kaloa. So those are the Hawaiian moon phases, so kind of near the end of the month. Those who took part in the march were the chiefs and warriors who had died, the Aumakua, the kind of spirit animal or animal deity, and the gods, each of whom had their own march. If a chief enjoyed silence in this life, his march would be silent, save for the creaking of the food calabashes suspended from carrying sticks. If a chief had been fond of music, the sound of the drum, nose flute, and other instruments were heard as they marched. Sometimes there were no lights. At other times there were torches, but not so bright as for the gods and demigods. A chief whose face had been sacred must lead the march. Even his own warriors might not precede him. If on the contrary, his back had been sacred, he must follow in the rear of the procession. A chief who had been well protected in life would march between his warriors. On the marches of the chief, a few Aumakua would march with them in order to protect their living progeny who might chance to meet them on the road. Sometimes the parade came when a chief lay dying or just dead. It paused before the door for a brief time and then passed on. The family might not notice it, but a neighbor might see it pass and know that the chief had gone with his ancestors who had come for him. In the march of the Aumakua of each district, there was music and chanting. The marchers carried torches which burned brightly, even on a rainy night. They might even be seen in broad daylight and were followed by whirlwinds. They cried out, "Kapu Omoe," as a warning to stragglers to get out of the way or to prostrate themselves with closed eyes until the marchers passed. Like the chiefs, they too sometimes came to a dying descendant and took him away with them. The march of the gods was much longer, more brilliantly lighted, and more sacred than that of the chiefs or the demigods. The torches were brighter and shone red. At the head, at 3 points within the line, and at the rear were carried bigger torches, 5 being the complete number among Hawaiians, the ku'alima. The gods with the torches walked 6 abreast, 3 males and 3 females. One of the 3 at the end of the line was the youngest sister of the volcano goddess, Pele. The first torch could be seen burning up at Kahuku when the last of the 5 torches was at Honoapu. The only music to be heard on the marches of the gods was the chanting of their names and mighty deeds. The sign that accompanied them was a heavy downpour of rain with mist, thunder, and lightning, or heavy seas. Their route the next day would be strewn with broken boughs or leaves, for the heads of the gods were sacred and nothing should be suspended above them. If a living person met these marchers, it behooved him to get out of the way as quickly as possible. Otherwise, he might be killed unless he had an ancestor or an Aumakua in the procession to plead for his life. If he met a procession of chiefs and had no time to get out of the way, he might take off his clothes and lie face upward, breathing as little as possible. He would hear the marchers cry, "Shame," as they passed. One would say, "He is dead." Another would cry, "No, he is alive, but what a shame for him to lie uncovered." If he had no time to strip, he must sit perfectly still, close his eyes, and take his chances. He was likely to be killed by the guard at the front or at the rear of the line, unless saved by one of his ancestors or by an Aumakua. If he met a procession of gods, he must take off all his clothes but his loincloth and sit still with his eyes tightly closed, because no man might look on a god, although he might listen to their talk. He would hear the command to strike. Then, if he was beloved by one of the gods as a favorite child or namesake, being in their bloodline, he would hear someone say, "No, he is mine," and he would be spared by the guards. Many Hawaiians living today have seen or heard the ghostly marchers. So that's the background of night marchers. And so I don't know if many of you have been to Hawaii, visited Hawaii, but I just wanted to tell you about a couple of areas in Hawaii where night marchers are known to be heard and seen. So the Pali Highway on Oahu runs along the famous King Kamehameha battle site, and nighttime visits are not recommended. and Kualoa Ranch, where I went to summer camp on Oahu's windward coast. Night marchers have been spotted around an area that is said to house the remains of hundreds of Hawaiian chiefs and are said to be responsible for a good many nighttime car accidents.
Wow.
So just a little thing about going to camp at Kualoa. So it was a summer camp. It was kind of tense, and it was on the beach, so we canoed and things like that. But we were only in tents near the beach, and so I remember being young, like in the 5th grade or something, and lying in my little cot and hearing the wind blow, but I was always so nervous to think about hearing like a conch shell or drums. And so that was kind of something that kept me up at night during summer camp. But that's a little bit of my local story for you.
Wow, thank you, Ebony. If you could drop those names in the chat, please, because places to avoid would be really great. Thank you. Wow. Wow, I feel like I've just learned so much, and in the process still gotten really scared. And it also makes me think about, you know, my own culture and what the folklores are there as well. Yeah, thank you. I would love to now introduce Kirsten Greenwich, who is the playwright for the play Feeding Beatrice, which if you all have not listened to yet, please immediately after this visit Recognition Radio the website to get your ticket for that. Kirsten is one of my favorite people, like I've said. She is an award-winning playwright. She is a teacher, an educator, a mentor, a friend. I won't read her bio. I will let you go and find that for yourself. But just one of the most generous human beings that I know. I'm gonna stop gushing now because it's gonna get embarrassing soon. Kirsten.
All right. Thanks for having me. Fran is one of my favorite people as well. And I feel like with these stories that preceded me, I've met some kindred spirits because this is definitely my jam. I'm really happy to be here. And now I'm not going to sleep at all this whole weekend. Similar to Ebony, I just have a story to relate. Not a written story. My story is about the house where I live. So I live with my sisters and my mom and my husband and my 2 kids and my sister's little girl. And when we moved here about 4 years ago, and when we were looking for a space, we needed a place that could fit all of us. And we had lots of things, lots of needs. And one of my needs was like, can it please not be haunted? And I don't think I got that need. So when we moved here, what we found out was that it is on the property of Rebecca Nurse. So I live in Massachusetts, and many people know Massachusetts for the Salem witch trials. So Rebecca Nurse was one of the people who was accused of witchcraft and killed as part of that hysteria in 1692. And so her family moved away from the Danvers-Salem area, and some of her descendants changed their last name to Norse, and instead of nurse, N-U-R-S-E, Norse, N-O-U-R-S-E. And they have a farm. They own a farm and have a farm stand, and it's about 1 minute from where I live. And if you go on GPS and look up my house's address, sometimes it will come up as Norse Farms still. So that's where we live. And I was not so happy to know that, because I thought, okay, well, where is she? And is she going to hang out, or her descendants come out and hang out and be like, who are these Black people who are hanging out on our land? So we moved in, and it was pretty quiet. So I was happy about that. And my sisters were trying to figure out what we should name the house. And so we decided to name the house after my grandmother's little sister, Gwendolyn, who died when she was 7. And so we have felt like we really wanted to honor her. She's part of a family's history and folklore of our own family about this little girl who never got to grow up into adulthood. And my 2 sisters feel like that Gwendolyn has actually shadowed them for her entire life, their entire lives. So my sister consulted a healer, and the healer said, you know, Gwendolyn is excited that you bought this house and want to honor her, but she's still a little girl. And she doesn't care about a house. Like if you bought a little girl a house, she doesn't care about that. She wants toys. And she wants candy. So we made, instead of the house, we set up toys around the house to make sure that she felt welcome. And that the healer was like, that's not going to work either, because the toys she's looking for, she died in like 1924. She doesn't know what these toys are. They're plastic. So we're like, oh, all right. So we put out wooden toys, and the healer was like, good. She's cool. She's running around the house. She's fine. The house is a great place. She likes it. So things were quiet, and we were happy for a little bit. And I did not see anything. I didn't think anything was going on in the house, and everything was cool. Until my 2 sisters said that at night, when they wake up for like a glass of water or something, they kept thinking that they saw me hanging out in the kitchen, and they'd call my name. And this woman who felt like a motherly presence would turn, and she had like a hood and a cape like outfit. And she would turn, and then she would just disappear. So I wasn't that cool about living here after that. But we, you know, when you move in with your whole family, it's really hard to move out, because they all live here with you. It's not just like with your husband and your kids. You're like, we're getting out. So I'm kind of locked in here. But Gwendolyn apparently was fine and okay. So I thought, oh, I'm not seeing this woman, so it's fine. And then it turned out that this person was hanging out near where my kids' rooms are. So that's a specific part of the house. It's the living room, and their 2 rooms are off of the living room. And so then she started, it would be that at night she'd hang out on the couch over there. And so I would put them to, I'm such a scaredy cat, put them to bed and be like, everything's okay? Great. And shut their doors and like hightail it up to my room. No camaraderie there. It's like your mom's big Brady cat, not telling you why she's getting out of your rooms real quick at night. And my husband would not sometimes see a shadowy figure as well. But still things were pretty quiet. I did not see anything for a long time. So we were about 2 years into our time here. Gwendolyn's okay. I'm not really seeing the shimmery, the shadowy woman. But I do start to get this idea that every once in a while I get on kicks. And my kids go to a religious school, they go to a Quaker school. But I was like, that's not enough. This Easter, we're gonna listen to the Bible on tape up until Easter. And my kids are gonna get to know the Bible because they're heathens, and this is what we're gonna do. So we started listening to the Bible, and the kids were against it. They're like, we get enough at school, we're cool, we don't need this. And we would listen to it in the car and in our house. And there was one night where they were really grumpy about it. They were grumpy about that. They were grumpy about a lot of stuff. And I put it on my phone. It was on Audible. And we got to the first chapter of Exodus, and I turned it on, and the kids were all grouchy about it. And they were like, turn it off. It's dinner time, leave us alone. And there was this picture on the bookshelf in that corner of the house where the shrouded lady hangs out, and it flew off the wall and slammed on the ground and shattered. And that was my lesson, that whatever is living in here with us is a protector of children, does not like it when I get mad at the kids. That's their corner, the kids' corner, her corner. I gathered up the picture. I put it back on the shelf. It is a picture of children, cleaned up all the glass. And if I would like to read the Bible myself, I do that. I have to find another way to introduce it to them. But it occurred to me that whatever lives in here with us is very, very protective of children. Rebecca Nurse herself did not live on this property, but herself had eight kids. And so it's her descendants who live on this, who took over the land. And so now I just steer clear of that area. And let whoever is protecting, I feel very grateful that whoever is in here with us is protecting my children. But that's my ghost story. And I've had to learn to live with whoever is in here because we're not gonna be able to leave. I'm not gonna be able to leave because the rest of my family is somewhat cool with living with Gwendolyn, the Shrouded Lady, and whatever other spirits from the North family. And one other thing is my niece is actually a descendant of the Norse family as well, because my sister's husband is a descendant of the Norse family. So somehow it's all full circle. And that is my ghost story.
Wow, thank you, Kirsten.
You're welcome.
I don't know how you can live in that house. I think I would like hightail it out of there. I'd be like, what do I need to sacrifice to my family now in order to to make this trade? Because something's got to give. I am also a huge scaredy cat. This has been like my dose of horror stories. I'm the kind of person that I will only watch horror movies or shows in the daytime. Like once it passes like 3 o'clock even, that's my cutoff, because I just know I will not be able to sleep, and I live alone. So thank you so much to our storytellers. I am so filled with joy, and especially at how eclectic they were, how different they were. All of you, let me say, like has you when you get into your storytelling voice, and there's always that moment where like you can hear in your voices and intonation like the fear and like the suspense, and I definitely felt very drawn in. So thank you, Laura, Brianna, Ebony, Kirsten. It has been a delightful evening. And we are at 8 o'clock, so unfortunately don't have any time to hear stories from all of you, but I would love to still get those and collect those. So if on Facebook or emailing them to us directly, we can definitely share those. If you've got a personal ghost story that you would like to share with all of us. But last thing that I'll say for tonight is, again, if you haven't heard Feeding Beatrice, please go on to Recognition Radio, the website, and find more information about that. And also for our other 3 shows that are coming up: The Bleeding Class by Chisa Hutchinson, We Are Continuous by Harrison David Rivers, and The Resurrection of Michelle Morgan by Christina Anderson. All really brilliant, wonderful Black playwrights. And last thing, please be generous with yourselves today, tomorrow, in the coming weeks. And remember to take the time to breathe and to inhale goodness and exhale all of the stress from your bodies. I feel like, especially right now, we are, waiting with bated breath and refreshing our computers all the time. So just remembering to really take the time to breathe. So thank you, everyone. It has been such a joyous evening around our virtual campfire. Thank you. Have a good night.